Well, you lucky dogs, you get a second Nintendo Switch 2 video out of me this week, which is not anything I expected to do because I was not really buying into the idea of having the Switch 2 revealed this week like a lot of folks were. I was thinking maybe next week, the end of September, or possibly into October. However, even though we're not talking about anything official regarding the Switch 2 today, we are talking about these insane leaked images, and of course I am air quoting leak here, that seem to be possibly, allegedly showing us what might be the final design for the Switch 2. So this is a crazy story and not anything I expected to wake up to today, but as I woke up in bed and quickly looked at my phone before getting up and preparing for work, I realized that there were images of the Switch 2. This was the first thing I saw when I got onto Twitter. And so here's what I have to say. Before we look at these, obviously we're going to look at some of these images. So if you have not seen them somehow, and if you don't want to see them, then you of course won't want to see or watch the rest of this video, I should say. But it has to be noted that part of my approach to this conversation today is trying to discern whether or not we should even believe these. It's not official. It's a leak just like any other leak. These are images and mock-ups of something that might be a new console just like we've seen in the past. We've seen evidence of when these have turned out to be real, and we've seen evidence of when they've turned out to be fake and not real. So I want to approach it from both angles here. So I'm not totally bought in on this because it very easily could be something that is fake and not real, but it's got everyone talking about it. Everyone from Forbes to IGN is really reporting on these images here in this whole leak situation. So there's definitely enough traction to warrant a video and a discussion, like I said. And so, like I said, if you don't want to see these images, don't watch this video, but I'm going to look at them with you guys. And yes, I'm going to approach this from the angle of, is this real or is this fake? So the images we're going to look at apparently have originated from some Chinese message board or forum board or website, something similar to the last story about the possibility of the Switch 2 name being leaked from somebody who worked in the manufacturing plant in China, seeing the number 2 plastered on the consoles and on the boxes. And this seems to be something similar. According to IGN, it was on a Chinese website and then made its way to Reddit, which is when it blew up. And Andy Robinson from VGC, of course, was sharing all of these images on Twitter. And we're looking at like mock-ups or renderings. They're actually CAD images, CAD drawings of what apparently the final design would look like. So they're not actual photos, but then there are some photos of what seems to be the outer shells of the back of the Switch 2, as well as the Joy-Con shells. So a lot of interesting stuff to look at. And so let's kind of dive into kind of the first main image we see here. And so theoretically, here it is. This is the Switch 2. It is just a really sleek, fancy looking Nintendo Switch. If, and again, the key word is if here, guys. I am not going to peddle this like fact yet because we don't know until Nintendo tells us. But this is all, like I said, a huge story and it's worth covering and discussing today. If this is real, it's just another Switch. It's a fancier, sleeker looking Switch for sure. There are some images that show the size comparison, so theoretically this might be significantly bigger than the regular Switch, which is an exciting prospect, I will admit. But we're just looking at a Switch, you know? It looks very straightforward. The Joy-Cons basically identical. The form factor, it's another Switch. We can see images of the top and the bottom of the Switch 2, and it's certainly interesting to get an idea. I don't think I can see where, in theory, the cartridge would go when looking at this. This also looks like the bottom of the Switch 2 here, where it would actually, in theory, dock. This is clearly an image of the top here, and it does kind of look like there is a little door there for where the cartridge slot would be. So, again, this is just a CAD rendering that we don't know is officially real or not yet. But if it's real, there does seem to be an indication of where the cartridges would go, and that makes it that much easier to believe that it would be backwards compatible, because why wouldn't this also be able to play Switch 1 cartridges if in fact this is real? A lot has been made about the back. You can see that there seems to be the larger kickstand, similar to the Switch OLED here. In fact, this whole thing just looks like a really big Switch OLED, if I'm being honest. The form factor of the Joy-Cons and the triggers here, it looks like there's really big buttons to actually separate the Joy-Cons. from the actual Switch itself, if these are even accurate renderings of what the buttons would look like. I do have to say, if this is matching what the final form factor of the Joy-Cons will look like, it is disappointing to see that they don't look any more comfortable or more ergonomically designed for the adult human hand. So that bothers me. I basically never play my Switch portably, if I'm being honest. I don't use the Joy-Cons and hold them very often. Part of the reason I stepped away from doing so over the years is because I do find it uncomfortable. It's not a comfortable device to hold. Like, let's just call it what it is. The Joy-Cons are not comfortable. It's not comfortable when you're playing in handheld mode. I don't like it. And if this is accurate and real, then they don't look any more comfortable, and I do find that to be kind of annoying. But let's go ahead and move over to the Joy-Cons themselves. So we have a rendering here of the Joy-Con. Now, the big conversation and takeaway from these images, as you can imagine, is it seems to be matching what was reported, I don't know, many, many months ago, I want to say, maybe earlier in the year, that it was going to be using magnets instead of the rail system that the current Joy-Cons use. And this looks like something that you more insert or attach to the side of the Switch as opposed to slide in via a track or a rail. In fact, here is apparently an image of the shell of the Joy-Cons. You can see there's no buttons or analog stick, but this does kind of seem to match that, CAD image we just saw of the Joy-Cons. And again, nothing indicating a track. It looks like there's like the actual electronic port there with the pins and then the two little holes to the side. I think that's just how you plug it in. So I think it's going to be a combination of plugging it in and securing it via some kind of actual physical attachment means, as well as magnets probably also holding it together. That's just kind of my guess and what I can surmise from looking at this. Very interesting to see, again, if in fact these are also real. And there is certainly reason to believe that Nintendo might already be manufacturing all of the hardware for the Switch 2 at this point. The other physical image we can see is what seems to be like the inside of the circuit board and a different view of the shells of the Joy-Cons. I'm not smart enough to be able to take much away from this other than to say, yes, this looks like the inside of a Switch. I don't know anything else going on here, but it's just another image to look at, and so it's interesting from that lens. And the last images to look at are the size comparisons. Again, we're just going off of the theory that allegedly these are real or these are based on the actual final product. Not even an in-development version, but in theory, the final product. And I believe it was reported to be an 8-inch screen, which is freaking awesome. It might actually convince me to play portably more often if it really does look that good. And by looking at the front and back of these images, you can see exactly how much bigger the actual Switch unit and Switch device is itself. It is taller because of the larger screen, so I will say, when it comes to using the Joy-Cons in handheld mode, if it's at least taller, it will make them bigger, and so in theory, it would also make them more comfortable for me to hold and to play, and also for probably a lot of other people that have the same issue with the Joy-Cons being too small and too uncomfortable and cramping your hands. Because this looks like it's a longer, taller device, the Joy-Cons have to match that size, when plugged into the actual Switch itself and playing it in handheld. So I'm just going off of my guesses and what I can take away from these pictures that, again, we don't even know are real. And that is something that I would kind of like, and maybe it would make it more comfortable for me. So that's what we've got to go on so far. There's a couple of other images that are all the same stuff, just from different angles. I only chose a few that I felt were the most important to show and to share. And hopefully, this video isn't going to get taken down because I showed those images. I haven't seen anyone else's videos taken down, but it's early. I've got to start work soon here, so I don't know what's going to actually happen. I might determine not to upload this if I see people are having issues. So if you're watching this video, hopefully that means everything was fine and safe for me to post this video and share these images this way. And so, I'll recap some of my takeaways from just looking at it visually. Again, I'm going to keep saying this, okay? If it's real, because we don't know that it's real, but if this was real and accurate, it's another Switch, as we kind of expected it would be. I will say, here's an interesting feeling these images gave me that I wasn't prepared to have until I first looked at images that I believed might be the actual Switch 2. And it was a little bit of a ho-hum kind of a feeling. And it's interesting because for years we've all been talking about, oh, the Switch 2 is going to be another Switch. It's going to be another Switch. So it's going to be a hybrid device, just a Switch, more powerful. And so it was always only ever going to look just like this, just like a Switch. We're just supposed to know that it's a lot more powerful internally. But even though in my mind's eye, I knew that it would just be another Switch, looking at this and seeing it just be that, it's like I said, it just looks like a Switch OLED to me. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that is what it was going to look like. It's just a Switch. It's no different. Like, it doesn't mean I'm going to be less excited to play more powerful games on it. And I'm not even saying that this is like the reaction anyone is supposed to have. And I'm not even saying I'm disappointed. I'm just more trying to analyze sort of in real time with you guys the fact that my knee-jerk reaction was like, oh, yeah, it's just another Switch. I don't know if any of you guys had a similar kind of feeling. I'd be curious to hear from you guys in the comments if you shared this sentiment or if you didn't even have any kind of a reaction in that sense. But I guess maybe before looking at these images, I thought that the first time we would see it revealed from Nintendo in theory, that it would be some crazy, weird, obviously new design to a hybrid Switch that would just stand out a lot more as new, as opposed to looking very much almost identical to a current Switch. So, I don't know. Not a big deal, really. Again, it's not a big deal. It's about the power under the hood and the games it will play. But I just had that ho-hum sort of reaction when I first looked at them. But now we're moving on to the other stuff. It should be noted, of course, that there were also apparently some specs that have been discussed when it comes to this thing. And if you know me, you already know I am not smart in this world. I don't know anything about tech specs and numbers and consonants and letters mixed together to explain what chipsets do and mean. I don't know any of that crap. I've seen it summarized and explained in layman's terms as basically a PlayStation 4. And if you think about a PlayStation 4, especially if you're playing in handheld, you think about games like The Last of Us Part 2 or Ghost of Tsushima, which are incredible games. And so if we can get Nintendo games, if we know Nintendo, let me say it this way. If we know Nintendo is developing games like Metroid games and Zelda games and Mario games and, I don't know, an F-Zero game, new IPs, whatever they might be doing in the future, another Pikmin game, anything they might be developing using something as powerful as a PlayStation 4 that was able to produce graphics like Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding, beautiful games that released in the very kind of late era of the PlayStation 4. That technology in Nintendo's hands for their first-party franchises is a massively exciting prospect, and it makes me just go gaga over the possibilities. Now, to me, the only argument against that being a good choice in power is if that would in any way inhibit third parties from making their games release multi-platform on the PS5 and Series X and PC, as well as the Switch 2. And on top of even just releasing it on the Switch 2 as well, I also want them to be day and date. Okay, no more of this delayed port thing that we've seen with the Switch. That has been one of the worst things. I mean, it obviously hasn't hurt the success of the Switch, so let me at least say that. But as a fan who would like to say, maybe I want to buy this game or play this game on my Switch, I had no reason to do so because a lot of games I'd want to play would come out on the other consoles first, so I would buy those. And so I want the Switch 2 to not only make it easier for all games, even up to like a GTA 6, to release on the Switch 2, but I want them to be day and date. Okay, no more delays when it comes to ports. So that is the only thing. If this is true, if the power of this is accurate and it's the power of a base PlayStation 4, will that make it hard for third parties to release their games on the Switch 2? And will it make it hard for them to release them on the Switch 2 day and date with the other platforms? That's the main thing I want to know, and I don't know the answer. It's just the question I'm left with, seeing this information and not knowing if it's real or not. And so that's a nice segue to kind of the last main topic to discuss when it comes to this whole thing. Is this real? And should we believe it? Like I said, this is being covered by the largest and most reputable outlets. And while no one is claiming it's accurate, the way it's getting coverage means I think a lot of people behind these larger outlets have enough reason to trust it could be real to want to make stories about it and break it down. And so I am still skeptical, though. Here's the thing. I could see this falling into one of two categories. This could be the Switch Lite image leak, or this could be the Nintendo NX controller image leak. The Switch Lite, which at the time was just referred to by the internet as the Switch Mini, when it was a theoretical thing that maybe Nintendo would make, had the back casing shell of the Switch Lite leaked from a factory via this image. Hopefully I can find it and share it with you here. And I remembered covering it, and I was very skeptical. This image leaked, and we didn't know to believe it or not. A lot of people were skeptical, myself included, and it turned out to be real. The Switch Mini was real, and it was revealed to be the Switch Lite, and it absolutely matched this picture right here. So this picture was a real leak from a factory someone took with their phone and put on the internet, and it was the real freaking deal. Also, the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom OLED Switch box images that I was also skeptical about, those were real too. And all the images from the game that were plastered on the Joy-Cons and the boxes that was like, we've never seen that before, that's not real. It all turned out to be real, and they were in the game. So that's an example of when something can leak and be real. But of course, we have to go to the most frustrating, aggravating thing I've ever experienced. And if you somehow were following me back in the Nintendo NX days, because I was a YouTuber and I was podcasting with some friends and I was running this channel and covering NX rumors, this made me so angry. I was so pissed anyone would spend the time to do this, but they did. This image, a couple of images of this controller leaked that matched identically to patent images of some sort of touchscreen circular Nintendo NX controller. Someone 3D printed this, and it is really convincing. It looks like real glass and a real touchscreen on a real controller that maybe Nintendo was making for the NX at the time. And people fell for this. I certainly thought it could have been real. I mean, I was like, whoa, this is like crazy. And then the people that made it came out and admitted it's fake. We made it up. We 3D printed it and we tricked you guys. And so something that convincing was proven to be fake. So again, the Switch Lite image was real. The Nintendo NX image was fake. So where does that leave us with these images? At the end of the day, all I can say is, I don't know. I don't know, man. Maybe that's not satisfying enough of an answer to you, but I look at these and I get excited because it feels like it really could be something. I also get a little disappointed because if it's real, I didn't really want to find out this way. And I saw these images from the first time I saw anyone talking about it. I don't want to say who I saw, just shared the images and said, hey, Switch 2 leaks. And it's somebody well-known, somebody who I follow, somebody who's reputable. And they just shared the image. They weren't even hidden on Twitter behind like the spoiler thing where you have to click the button to reveal the image. I was like, damn, they're just right here. And then everyone else was doing the same thing. I mean, everyone was doing it. So it's a little disappointing in a world where this turns out to be real, that there was no opportunity to avoid them as somebody who just uses Twitter, and that Nintendo didn't reveal it to me. I would have been a lot more excited to get that tweet from Nintendo that says the Switch 2 is going to be revealed, tune in at this date and time, and then to watch the trailer and the footage for the first time and actually see what it was going to be from Nintendo's messaging, not from stupid leaked CG mock-ups on Twitter. So again, that's only assuming that these are real. So that part would disappoint me. But they could be fake. And so could they be real? Yes. Could they be fake? I mean, people have made CG like animations about Switch 2 stuff that looked somewhat convincing, and I never believed, and then they turned out to be fake, right? So who knows? I do think it's kind of telling that the majority of the images are just CD renderings and mock-ups, CAD images. That's something. It's like, why aren't there more specific images? Like, why just leak these out? What if this doesn't even match what the final product is supposed to be, you know? So I'm just of two minds, and I don't know what to think about it other than I am excited to learn about it, and more than anything, I've said this a few times, what's under the hood matters more than what it looks like. If it's going to be another hybrid Switch console, then it was going to look like something like this no matter what, because it has to. But I just care about how powerful it's going to be. I care about the games. I want to know if I can play a better next-gen version of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond on this thing. That is the number one thing I care about, is how Metroid Prime 4 fits into this whole thing. And then, when is Nintendo going to officially reveal it? You know, is this going to convince Nintendo to reveal it sooner than later? Is Nintendo upset about this? Maybe Nintendo's sitting there laughing because this is all fake and they know it's fake and they're like, let these idiots on the internet have their fun. We'll show them the real deal when they're ready. Maybe that's what's happening. So I don't know. Interesting stuff. The Joy-Cons, the size of it, the look of it, the magnetic connection, the lack of a rail, the kickstand, the size of the screen, the specs matching a PS4. It's all very interesting stuff. Is it real? Is it fake? Who knows? But this is the news today. And I guess now we have to bide our time and wait to see when Nintendo finally shows us, is this real or is this fake?